If you're responding to tweets you disagree with without being part of the community that they're from, or knowing any form of context for what was said, and you're arguing with semantics, pedantics, and straw men, you're going to have a bad time. People will laugh at you. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. So I see this pretty often. You'll be on Twitter or any social media platform, any website where there's a social element, a forum, whatever it might be, and sometimes somebody will come into a thread, it may be a tweet thread or otherwise, and they'll respond to something that has been said. Now, this thing that has been said by somebody, at the top of the tweet, it'll be something that the community that that person is a part of is familiar with. They don't have to, if it's a complex idea, they don't necessarily have to explain the entire situation, because if you've watched their videos or read their articles or taken in any of their content whatsoever, you would have an understanding already. But if it's something political or social or something where, it's easy to dissent, well, people might come in, look at it at face value without an explanation or any context and say, that's bad. Or, I'm going to argue this point. I can watch a video, read an article, read a book from the poster, okay, or be one of their friends or involved in the community. Or I could just come in and say, you're stupid, you're wrong, you're bad. Now, also, you'll see a lot of times that people will use scare words. There are certain words on all sides of politics, in all kinds of social situations, that are scare words. Somebody will point to somebody with an ad hominem attack and say, that woman is a sexist. Or, here's a guy that's a nationalist. Of course, they won't ever talk about the context in which nationalism is being used. In many cases, it's being used pretty often among, especially the right wing, as a comparison, a spectrum of nationalism and globalism. But people will often use this word. It's been turned into a scare word by the media, because President Trump and others say, we're nationalists, which is pretty simple in concept. It basically means, I am concerned with my country first, Canada first, America first. Whatever country it might be, if you think your country should be prioritized by your legislature, by your leaders, by your people, and you shouldn't capitulate to other countries, you should look out for the best interests of your people first, your country first, well, that's called nationalism. But people often look at it as more of an ethno-nationalist framing. They'll say, that person's a black nationalist. They want an ethno-state of only black people. Or a white nationalist. An ethno-state where all other races have been removed and it's just the white people. That's the kind of nationalism, that Aryan nation nationalism that a lot of people use. But that shows you the power of words. The fact that certain words, or certain people, as soon as they're labeled or branded with a certain framing, certain word, that's pretty much the end of a lot of people really feeling comfortable engaging with that person or that content. And then again, there's situations like toxic masculinity. Okay? It ties the word toxic to masculinity. You never hear about toxic femininity. You can't even say it. Toxic femininity. You don't hear that. You hear about toxic masculinity. Now, there is such thing as toxic amounts of masculinity. That's true. But the fact is that looking at it and mentioning it quite often puts people on guard for masculinity in general, which is a good thing. And in fact, we need more masculinity in our men. I don't know about you, but personally, I like it that my men are masculine and my women are feminine. But again, there are people that fall into different genders and have different preferences, and I totally respect them. Okay, all genders are equal, and no matter how much masculinity or femininity you have, if it's not in a toxic range, is just fine. Let's not discriminate based on sex or gender. But of course, toxic masculinity has given masculinity at large a negative brand. Whether that's intentional or not, it is still a consequence of using that term so often. So, yeah, you'll hear people that they'll call you a misogynist. They'll say that she's a man hater. This is a racist. This is a sex. This is all these different things. They'll put these on somebody based on something they've said. But if they don't look at the full context of what's being said, they only have a small frame of reference for what's going on, and it's the tweet or it's the specific article that doesn't have the full story in it. And they come in and they go, well, you do this and you do that. They use straw man attacks. They use semantics, pedantics. They don't really know what they're responding to. They are just sort of, for lack of a better word, triggered by the content. And thus they must lash out. They must let their outrage be known. Please let me know if you have any outrage in the comments below. I do appreciate that. But yeah, no. Language is powerful. People are dissuaded from even using certain words, like nationalist. Like I describe myself as a nationalist. I believe in America first. You know why I believe in America first is because I look at China, I look at Russia, I look at Brazil, I look at all these countries, and I go, do the people in those countries think Brazil first, Russia first? Are they looking out for their best interests? Of course they are. They have in-group preference, and they damn well should. So I don't want to be the one person to go, well, I feel too guilty. I feel too guilty, so I can't be a nationalist. I need to be looking out for the other countries. Now, we should be fair and as equitable as possible with our neighbors and other countries and other groups in the world. Absolutely. But we should look out for ourselves first, because that is what everybody else is doing. And if you're the one person that's looking out for other people ahead of yourself all the time, well, you're in a ripe place to be taken advantage of. So I definitely recommend a little nationalism. And I think most people actually agree, but they're afraid of using that word. Now, globalist is kind of overused as well, and it's also globalism is a scare word on the right wing. Nationalist is being used as a scare word for Democrats. If you say you're a nationalist, a lot of Democratic voters and supporters will just tune you right out. Okay, it's a way for certain information, certain content providers to be labeled as, well, unsavory, immoral, evil. Okay, and there is this strain of guilt by association, guilt by conversation. Can't even debate somebody that happens to be, one of questionable belief, because even talking to them associates you with them, and then you're looked at as a pariah among certain groups. I think that that's very reductive. I think that that's very anti-intellectual. I think we should be trying to reach out to both or all sides of the political spectrum, all ideologies, all religions, all creeds, all people, and look at them by their character, of course, and not by who they have talked to before. Because if you're saying that I've talked to somebody once, and that means I can't be talked to by you, or I can't be talked to by anybody rational anymore because I spoke to one irrational person, that's not the real world. If we all operated with that standard, well, we would almost not talk at all. We can't keep on judging people by their mistakes. And if somebody has a dangerous ideology, well, how are we going to dissuade them or persuade them over to something that is a little bit more peaceful? How can we? Well, we have to talk to them. We have to talk to them. But of course, you do need to know what the person is talking about. Now, again, I'm not trying to police speech. Okay, if you want to go on the internet and post an ill-advised, ill-informed response to somebody else where you haven't looked at the full context and you haven't really, gotten to the bottom of what they're really talking about, you're just looking at it at face value with your confirmation bias intact. Notably, if you're a partisan and they're on the opposite side of the political spectrum, you have an additional layer of disenchantment with that person as well. You have an extra layer of bias against that person. So you're not willing to give them the same fair shake you would somebody that you trust, somebody that you already agree with. So, without knowing any form of context, and of course semantics, pedantics, and straw men. So I say if you're looking to debate somebody, semantics and pedantics are not going to persuade anybody. Okay, they're not very good in debate. It's especially if somebody has a very concrete view and a very specific ideology. It's not going to help to point to the little things. It needs to be about a big picture. And about framing things in a different way and kind of actually pacing them, agreeing with them on what is correct about their argument, not just casting stones. If you want to, like I say, be my guest, but it doesn't look great, and it's not the strongest way to pursue intellectualism, in my opinion.